All right, so one of the questions I often get asked is, where do I find salespeople? How do I hire good salespeople? Where are they hiding? And my answer is always the same, no matter what industry or who I'm talking to, or what they're looking for, which is, how do you define salesperson? There's a lot to that, and could spend a lot of time on that. So let's jump into some of the basics first, and we can go from there. When you say salesperson, what exactly do you mean? Do you mean someone on the front end of the sales sphere that's out there building new relationships for your company, kicking down doors, making new contacts, um, heavy outreach, always looking for the new opportunity, what we would call hunters? So those are the hunting salespeople. They have their goal is to have a constant interaction with a network of people, so that they can be present when a need arises, when what we call the something happens. So they're there, something happens in that buyer's world that creates a need, and then they remember, oh, that hunter was around, and I think I'll give them a shot. So that's kind of the hunter role. The next role down the line is what we call the expert. These are the people that know your technology, whatever it is. They know all the intricate pieces and parts. They're what a lot of people call subject matter experts. We just shorten it to experts. They are really good at presenting solutions. They're really good at solving problems. They're the heroes. They jump in and save the day. But they struggle when it comes to, or they can struggle when it comes to outreach and being those aggressive hunting type salespeople. So those are your experts. The next type of salesperson is, the negotiators and closers. Those are the people that get down to, like, what is this deal going to really look like? The relationship has been established by the hunter. The solution has been presented to by the expert, or by the solution has been presented by the expert. And then now we're getting to the point where the customer or the prospect is about to become a customer. So we're down to negotiating the deals, going through the numbers. Maybe there's some concessions, there's some packages, or some other type of negotiation that happens. Those are kind of your that's what we call the closers. And then finally, the most common salesperson that we see, especially in business-to-business relationships, is the farmer. This is the person that is responsible for maintaining that relationship. They're already a customer or even a client. We'll talk more about the difference between customer and clients also in a future video. But they have, so these are the farmers. Their responsibility is to maintain the relationship, to make sure the promises are being kept, to keep that customer or client content, not give them a reason to go look elsewhere, and just to be high customer service oriented. The challenge with a lot of organizations is when they say salesperson, they want someone to do all four of those jobs, and it's really, really difficult, and I'll explain why, just from an inherent wiring standpoint. But it's also very, it's a very complex process to be a person that goes and builds a relationship, to know enough about the technology, whatever it is you're selling. And when I say technology, it can be anything. I mean, you can be selling concrete. There's still technology behind it. It can be computer software. It can be, flooring or computers themselves, or who knows what else. But there's always some sort of technology or, expertness behind your product. So you want somebody to build relationships, know your technology, be able to negotiate and close when it comes down to it in crunch time, and then also maintain that client for the duration. That's the mistake that a lot of companies make. And I say mistake for a lot of reasons. Number one is it's very hard to scale that model. So actually, let's back up. It's really hard to find someone that can do all those things, and I'll mention why in a second. So number one, once you find this unicorn, it's really hard to scale this business model because you need more unicorns, and they're hard to find. The other thing that I found is the principle. We should come up with a clever name for it, but some sort of principle that in my experience across multiple industries, multiple businesses, your unicorn is going to only be able to produce between $1.5 and $2.5 million in business. I found that to be true in everything from financial services to manufacturing to technology sales to business to consumer to business to business. I don't know why it is, but that's the cap. So $1.5 to $2.5 million. So let's say you got some real hustlers and they're $2.5 million, and you want to do 10 million in revenue. Well, you need 4 unicorns at that model. So that's your first. That's another challenge. The second part of this is what happens when they leave. They find a new gig. You need to replace them. They move away. Whatever it is, they have touched that customer 360 degrees. They're what we call a 360-degree salesperson. So they've touched that customer 360 degrees, and that customer is attached to them for all their needs. Is we're sending them their referral friends. They're working on new deals with them, their upgrades, their continued sales. So when they leave, you run the risk of creating that something happens that we talked about first part of the video. And now you're the cause of the something happening. So now they're going to look for a new service provider or a new product provider. So so that's kind of some of those challenges around having a 360-degree salesperson. They're really hard to find. They're really hard to scale. And then if they leave, you have a distinct problem. The other thing has to do with our wiring and how we're wired as humans. We spend quite a bit of time with our clients on personality types and styles. And there's 4 distinct styles, and we won't go into them super deep here because that's a whole other topic. But we'll call them the driver, the analytic, the expressive, and the relationship builder. So your hunters that go out in the marketplace and kick down doors and make new friends, they're usually the higher expressives. Your experts that are responsible for knowing all your technology are typically your analytics. Your negotiator closers, the ones that really get the job done, are your drivers, the deal makers, if you will. And then your farmers are your highly relationship-based salespeople. So when someone says they want a 360-degree salesperson, you're essentially asking them to be 4 different people. And it's really tough. And we'll go into the details of the different types. If you're looking for a hunter salesperson, they need to be a highly expressive, highly outgoing, a connector, a natural connector, or a natural promoter. They're typically not going to be highly detailed. It's just the way it works. You generally don't get a high communicator, natural connector, and a high level of detail all in the same person. So they're going to either be really good at one or the other things. They're either going to be really good at building relationships, and maybe they fall down a little bit on the details and the engineering and the customization and the science and the subject matter expert side, or they're going to really know your technology really, really well, but they're going to be afraid of going out into the marketplace and making new friends. They're the ones that maybe go to a business development event or marketing event and they're kind of sitting up against the wall. They're not necessarily making new friends. They're really good with the people they already know. So, don't confuse that. You're going to ignore the people they already know. But building new relationships are going to be very challenging. They're not really good at taking no for an answer. When they hear no, it's kind of like no to them, and they move along. So when you go from your hunting to your subject matter expert, 2 diametrically opposed styles. Then we move into closing the deal. Those people are less emotionally involved in the relationship, and they're usually highly driven. So those are our drivers. So they're going to be really good at kind of closing that negotiation, getting through some of those tough conversations to have. But they could have a tendency to not be patient enough for being the subject matter expert, and they may struggle with connecting on a relationship level enough with your as a farmer. So they have a kind of a narrow niche that they work really well in. So your farmers need to be highly relational. What that means is that they want to make sure the customer is happy. They want to make sure the customer's friends are happy, that the customer's relationships in their family or in their business are good. The relationship is really important to them. What that means is they may sometimes struggle with having tough conversations. So they may struggle to close a deal because they don't want to have those crucial conversations or just difficult conversations. They may also struggle with asking for business. If there's an opportunity that pops up, a new opportunity as they're maintaining this customer, they could, struggle with that asking, what we call asking for the business. So that's kind of some of the challenges around a 360-degree salesperson and all the different things that you're expecting them to do. So when somebody asks me, what are you looking? If somebody asks me, where do I find a good salespeople? We really want to get down into the details of what does a company need, what does the rest of your team look like, how do you lead your team, where are your customers, what kind of customers are they, what are you selling, what are your expectations for performance and volume and profitability, how you compensate, because that's a whole nother challenge. I'm a proponent of having hunters be, if not 100% commission based, very highly commission based for building new relationships, things they have control over. So they have control over building new relationships. So that's how I would pay them. Subject matter experts often hide behind the fact that they're just the engineer and they don't have to sell anything. So I always like to pull them out of the shadows a little bit and give them a little bit of a piece of the sale, so that they're encouraged to at least have the presence of mind on the types of things that they're presenting, that they have some skin in the game for closing the deal and being a part of the sales team. The negotiator closers can often be a sales manager, which wouldn't really participate in the individual performance or commission of a project or sale. They would just be part of the overall team performance. Or it can be another member of the team that is paid on performance. And then our farmers, I'm a huge fan of giving the farmers some sort of commission piece. Maybe if it's a 70% or 80% base salary with a 20 to 30% commission. Being that they're highly relational, security is really important to them. They're generally not going to gravitate towards a high performance, highly commissionable position. They want their base salary. They want their check every 2 weeks. Feel comfortable and set their own comfort and relations in their own household, and then give them some opportunities to make a little bit of money and present some solutions, and then to nudge them towards asking for the business. Of course, all of this has to be measured, and we'll talk about sales scorecards and measuring success in future videos. So I hope this helps in getting some understanding of the different types of salespeople.